The hum started subtly, a low thrum that vibrated through the soles of our boots. It was my 3rd month at the ranch, part of a new research team armed with the latest seismic and electromagnetic sensors. We were here to map the anomalies, to bring science to the folklore. The official log for that day, October 14th, reads, "Unexplained low-frequency vibrations detected at grid point 7. But what it doesn't say, what it can't possibly capture, is the feeling that came with it. A deep, bone-rattling sense of dread." Dr. Eris Thorne, our lead geophysicist, was ecstatic at first. He thought we'd found a new cavern system or a hidden aquifer. We deployed ground-penetrating radar, expecting to see hollow voids, tunnels, something to explain the strange readings. The screen showed nothing, just solid, dense rock, miles deep. Yet, the vibrations continued, and they were getting stronger. They weren't random either. They had a rhythm, a slow, deliberate pulse, like the heartbeat of something immense. Then came the electromagnetic spikes. They were synchronized with the vibrations, flaring up with each thrum from below. Our equipment went haywire. Compass needles spun wildly. Laptops flickered and died, and our radios hissed with static. Eris, ever the scientist, tried to rationalize it. A unique, magnetic or deposit, he'd mutter, poring over the data. An unprecedented geological phenomenon. But his eyes told a different story. They were wide, strained, constantly glancing at the ground as if he expected it to crack open. The local Ute liaison, a quiet man named Ben, just shook his head when we showed him the readings. He didn't look at the charts or the frantic squiggles on our screens. He just listened, his head tilted towards the earth. "It's not rock you're hearing," he said one evening, his voice barely a whisper against the wind. "It's waking up. You shouldn't have brought all this noise here." We dismissed it as superstition. We were scientists. After all, we were wrong. A week into the phenomenon, the vibrations began to move. Our sensors, spread across a 2-mile radius, tracked a slow but steady progression. It was moving from grid point 7, heading directly for our main research compound. Imagine something the size of a freight train, buried miles beneath you, and it's crawling your way. The fear was primal. It wasn't just the data. We could feel it. The ground would shudder, and a collective, gut-wrenching anxiety would wash over the entire team. Sleep became a luxury none of us could afford. Every creak of the building, every gust of wind, sounded like the earth groaning in anticipation. Aris was becoming unraveled. He spent 24 hours a day staring at the monitors, watching the anomaly's slow, inexorable approach. He'd trace its path with a trembling finger, muttering about impossible physics. "There are no tunnels," he'd repeat, like a mantra. "It's moving through solid rock." How is it moving through solid rock? The electromagnetic field it generated was so powerful now that it was interfering with our own neural pathways. Team members reported vivid nightmares, feelings of being watched, and an overwhelming urge to flee. 2 technicians broke protocol and simply vanished one night. Their truck found abandoned miles away. The night it reached us is seared into my memory. The vibrations were no longer a subtle hum. They were violent shudders that rattled our teeth. The lights flickered and died, plunging us into darkness lit only by the green glow of our emergency battery packs. The air grew thick, heavy with the smell of ozone and damp earth. And then, the sound changed. The rhythmic thrumming stopped. It was replaced by a scraping, grinding noise that seemed to come from directly beneath our feet. A sound close, impossibly large, dragging against stone. We were all huddled in the main lab, too terrified to speak. Aris was staring at a portable seismograph, his face a mask of pure horror. The needle was thrashing back and forth, off the charts. "It's right under us," he whispered, his voice cracking. It stopped. The scraping sound intensified, echoing up through the concrete floor. It was a searching sound, a scratching, questing noise that made the hair on my arms stand up. It was looking for a way out. Then came the mimicry. A faint voice echoed from the vents, distorted by static. It was one of the technicians who had fled. "Hello? Can anyone hear me? I'm lost. I'm so cold." "Sarah," one of our junior researchers started towards the door. "Mark, is that you?" I grabbed her arm, pulling her back. Ben had warned us about this. "It learns," he'd said. "It takes voices." The voice from the vents twisted, morphing into a perfect imitation of Sarah's mother. "Honey, it's me." "Let me in, sweetie. I'm here to take you home." Sarah broke down, sobbing, but none of us moved. We knew what was under us. It wasn't geological. The scraping stopped. A profound silence fell over the compound, more terrifying than the noise it replaced. We held our breath, listening. The only sound was our own frantic heartbeats, minutes stretched into what felt like an eternity. Then, a new sound began. A soft, wet, tearing noise. It wasn't coming from below anymore. It was coming from the walls. Not from inside the walls, but from the material of the walls themselves. The drywall began to warp and bulge inward, the paint cracking and peeling as if immense pressure was being applied from within the plaster. The section of the wall near the ceiling began to contort, stretching like rubber. It wasn't breaking, it was reshaping. An appendage, dark and glistening, pushed through the plasterboard. It wasn't solid. It was like living shadow, a form that defied the laws of physics. Moving through the solid matter of the wall as if it were water, it stretched down towards the floor, tapering to a point that resembled a claw, yet it left no hole, no tear in its wake. The walls simply reformed behind it. Aris screamed, a raw, terrified sound. Scrambled backward, the shadowy limb retracted back into the wall, vanishing as if it had never been. Then, all at once, the vibrations, the electromagnetic fields, the sense of dread, it all vanished. The lights flickered back on. Our radios crackled to life with the calm voice of the weather service. It was over. The next morning, we surveyed the compound. There was no damage. The walls were pristine. The ground was still. According to our instruments, everything was normal. If not for our shared memory, it could have all been a mass hallucination. But the data logs were there. The empty bunks of the missing technicians were there. Aris Thorne resigned that day, his career in shambles. He said science had no answer for what happened. I stayed on, but I never looked at the ground the same way again. We never detected the underground presence after that night. It was as if it had simply passed through us, tasted our fear, and moved on. But sometimes, late at night, when the wind is just right, I can hear a faint scraping sound from deep within the earth, and I know it's still down there. Not trapped, but waiting, moving through the solid rock, wearing voices like a coat, and searching for a new way to come to the surface. It's not a question of if it will try again, but when. Thanks for listening, and if you enjoyed this story, make sure to follow for more dailies from the ranch. Stay safe out there. The stars over Skinwalker Ranch don't just twinkle, they watch. I learned that the hard way. My name is Ethan, and I was a skeptic. A scientist drawn to the ranch's infamous high strangeness, like a moth to a very weird flame. I'd spent weeks cataloging electromagnetic fluctuations, atmospheric anomalies, the whole 9 yards. I was looking for patterns, for logic. What I found was something that logic can't explain. It started subtly. Strange readings on my equipment, sure, but also a feeling, a deep, unsettling sense of being observed not just from the ground, but from above. The air would grow heavy, silent, like the world was holding its breath. It was on one of those nights, under a moonless, ink-black sky, that it happened. I was calibrating a radio telescope, pointed straight up. My gear was going haywire, spitting out static and interference that made no sense. I looked up from my screen, annoyed, and froze. Directly overhead, where the constellation Draco should have been, the stars were gone. It wasn't a cloud. It was a patch of perfect, void-like blackness, darker than the surrounding night. The edges of it seemed to shimmer, like heat haze on a summer road. My scientific mind raced. A localized atmospheric distortion, a previously unobserved stellar phenomenon. But then, The shimmer intensified. The patch of blackness began to stretch, to tear. It wasn't a whole opening in the sky. It was as if the sky itself was a fabric being ripped apart. A silent, slow-motion tear in the universe. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. My instruments were screaming. A high-pitched digital wail that barely registered over the pounding in my ears. From the deepest part of that tear, something began to emerge. It wasn't a craft, not a light. It was a shape, a silhouette against the void. It was impossibly tall and gaunt, with limbs that seemed too long, too jointed, moving with an unnatural, jerky grace. It didn't fall. It descended, unwinding itself from the darkness like a spider on a thread. I could feel its presence. It was ancient, malevolent, and utterly alien. The feeling of being watched intensified 1,000 times over. A pressure in my skull that was almost physical. I fumbled for my camera, my hands shaking so badly I almost dropped it. I had to document this. No one would ever believe me otherwise. I raised the lens, trying to focus, my heart hammering against my ribs. Through the viewfinder, I could see it more clearly. The figure was humanoid, but wrong. Its head was too large, its neck too thin. It seemed to be looking around, surveying the landscape below with an unnerving stillness. It was as if it was searching for something, or someone. As it turned its head, I saw a glint, a flash of red from where its eyes should be. Not a reflection, but a self-contained light, like twin dying embers. That's when the sound started, not from the sky, but from all around me. A low, guttural clicking, a chattering that echoed from the sagebrush. It sounded like a chorus of insects, but deeper, more organic. And then came the whisper, carried on the cold night air, a sibilant hiss that seemed to form a single word. Ethan. Panic finally broke through my paralysis. I scrambled backward, tripping over my own feet, never taking my eyes off the thing in the sky. The chattering grew louder, closer. I could see movement in the shadows at the edge of my campsite, flickering shapes, low to the ground, circling me. The coyotes on the ranch were known to be bold, but this was different. Their eyes glowed with that same unnatural red light. The figure in the sky stopped moving. It tilted its head, and the red eyes fixed directly on me. The pressure in my head became an agonizing spike of pain. I felt a wave of pure, undiluted terror wash over me, a primal fear that bypassed all reason. It wasn't just fear of being hurt. It was the fear of being unmade, of having my very existence erased. I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that the things circling me on the ground were connected to the thing hanging in the sky. It was their master, their god, and it had called them here for me. The portal, the creature, the whispers, the red eyes in the dark, it was all part of the same nightmare. I turned and ran. I didn't care about my multi-million-dollar equipment, my research, my reputation. I just ran, blindly, away from the campsite, away from the chattering, away from those terrible red eyes. The whispering followed me, my name twisting into a mocking, predatory sound. The ground was uneven, and I stumbled constantly, my lungs burning. Behind me, there was a sound like a great sheet being snapped in the wind. I risked a glance over my shoulder. The tear in the sky was closing, stitching itself back together. And the figure, it was gone, vanished. It hadn't fallen. It hadn't flown away. It just ceased to be there. But the red eyes and the brush were still there, pacing me, hurting me. I ran until my legs gave out, collapsing in a heap miles from my camp. I lay there for what felt like hours, listening, waiting. The chattering had stopped. The whispers were gone. Eventually, the first light of dawn began to paint the eastern horizon, and the oppressive darkness finally lifted. The red eyes were gone. I made my way back to the main ranch house at sunrise, a babbling, incoherent wreck. I quit the project that day. I packed my bags and left, and I've never looked back. I can't explain what I saw. No science. Can a portal in the sky? A being from somewhere else. And its servants on the ground, wearing the skins of coyotes, whispering my name. Some nights, when the sky is particularly dark and clear, I feel it again. That presser, that sense of being watched from above. And I know, deep in my soul, that the portal can open again. I know that the thing that came through is still aware of me. And I know that its watchers, the skinwalkers of the ranch, are still waiting. They know my name. And one day, I fear, they will come to collect me. Thanks for listening. And please, be careful what you look for in the dark. You might just find it. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories from the ranch. Stay safe out there. The first time I saw them, I tried to rationalize it. A trick of the light. Maybe. The desert plays games with your eyes, especially as dusk bleeds across the mesas, painting everything in shades of bruised purple and deep orange. I was out near the eastern edge of the ranch, documenting strange magnetic fluctuations for a research project. The sun was a sliver on the horizon, and the air was getting that sharp, cold bite. Tu Italiano. That's when I noticed it, a silhouette, standing perfectly still on the ridge above me. It wasn't an animal, and it wasn't shaped like any person I'd ever seen. It was long, unnaturally so, with limbs that seemed just a little too thin, a little too angular. It was just a black shape against the dying light, completely devoid of detail. I raised my binoculars, my heart starting to thud against my ribs like a trapped bird. As I focused the lens, it was gone. Not like it had run or ducked. It was just not there anymore. I swept the ridge, my breath misting in the cold. Nothing. Just rocks and gnarled juniper trees. I told myself it was fatigue. That's what you do out here. You explain it away because the alternative is too terrifying to consider. The next few days were quiet. The equipment registered its usual bizarre spikes. The air hummed with that low, almost subsonic frequency that permeates the entire property. But I saw nothing else out of the ordinary. I started to relax, chalking up the silhouette to a tired mind. I was wrong. It was the fourth night when things truly escalated. A full moon hung in the sky, washing the landscape in an eerie, sterile light. I was in my small, reinforced observation trailer, reviewing sensor data. A sudden flicker on one of the perimeter cameras caught my eye. I rewound the footage. There, at the edge of the tree line, just beyond the reach of the security lights, was a figure. It was the same long, spindly shape. It was just standing there, watching the trailer. My blood ran cold. I switched to the live feed. It was still there. Motionless. A sentinel of shadow. I grabbed my high-powered flashlight, the kind that can cut through the thickest darkness, and my hand trembled as I unlatched the trailer door. The metallic click sounded like a gunshot in the dead silent night. I stepped outside, the cold air hitting me like a physical blow. I could feel its presence. You know how you can feel when someone's staring at you? It was like that, but 1,000 times more intense. A suffocating pressure that made the hairs of my arms stand straight up. I aimed the flashlight towards the tree line, my thumb hovering over the switch. My mind was screaming at me to get back inside, to lock the door and wait for sunrise. But a different part of me, the part that brought me to this cursed place, had to know. I took a deep breath and flicked the switch. A blindingly bright cone of light shot out, illuminating the trees, the dirt, the dry brush, and nothing. It was gone. The space, where it had been standing just a second before, was completely empty. I swept the beam of light back and forth, my heart hammering. There was nowhere it could have gone. The ground was open. It couldn't have run that fast, not without making a sound. It had simply vanished the instant the light touched the spot. I retreated back into the trailer, my mind reeling. This wasn't a trick of the light, this was real. Over the next week, the sightings became more frequent and more brazen. It was never just one anymore. I'd catch glimpses of them on the cameras. 2, sometimes 3, dark figures, standing on the ridges overlooking my position. They never did anything. They just watched. Their stillness was the most terrifying part. They stood like statues carved from night itself, observing me with an unnerving patience. I started feeling like a specimen in a jar. I stopped leaving the trailer after dark. The psychological toll was immense. Every shadow became a potential threat. Every gust of wind sounded like a whisper. Sleep offered little escape, my dreams filled with elongated figures and the feeling of being watched by unseen eyes. I was documenting everything, every sighting, every feeling of dread, but I knew no one would believe it without concrete proof. One evening, I decided to try something different. I set up a thermal camera alongside the regular one, pointing at a spot on a nearby ridge where they often appeared. My theory was simple. If they were living creatures, they had to have a heat signature. If they vanished from sight, maybe the thermal camera could still track them. The sun went down, and the familiar knot of anxiety tightened in my stomach. Hours passed. Nothing. Just the usual desert nightlife showing up as warm splotches on the thermal monitor rabbits. Coyotes. A stray deer. I was about to give up for the night, my eyes gritty from staring at the screens, when it happened. On the standard camera, a figure materialized on the ridge. It didn't walk into frame. It was just suddenly there, as if it had stepped out of the fabric of the night. My breath caught in my throat. I glanced at the thermal monitor. Nothing. The spot where the figure stood was as cold as the surrounding rock. It had no heat signature. It was a void hole in the thermal landscape. My scientific mind struggled to process the information. How could something be physically present, but thermally invisible? It defied the laws of physics. As I stared, mesmerized and horrified, a second figure appeared next to the first. Then a third. All of them dark, silent, and colder than the grave. They stood in a line, looking down directly at my trailer. A wave of pure, primal fear washed over me. This wasn't just observation. It felt like a judgment. I felt an overwhelming urge to communicate, to scream at them, to ask what they wanted, but my voice was trapped in my throat. I could only watch. Then, as one, they turned their heads slightly. It was a small, synchronized movement, but it was the most terrifying thing I had ever witnessed. It was as if they were acknowledging that I could see them, that the game was changing. They knew I knew, and then, one by one, they faded. Not quickly, like before. They slowly dissolved into the darkness, like smoke caught in a breeze, until nothing remained. I sat there for a long time, staring at the empty ridge, the silence of the ranch pressing in on me. I had come here seeking answers about the unknown, but all I found were more questions, and a terror so profound it has imprinted itself onto my very soul. I still don't know what those shadow creatures are, but I know they are still out there, in the dark spaces of that ranch, watching and waiting. Thanks for listening. And if you enjoy these stories from the ranch, make sure to follow for more. Stay safe out there. Have you ever felt like you were being watched, but when you turned around, nothing was there? That's how it started for me. A slow, creeping dread that settled in my bones the moment I set foot on Skinwalker Ranch. My name is Jacob, and I'm a geologist. I was part of a small research team sent to study the bizarre magnetic anomalies reported in the area. I was a skeptic, a man of science. I believed in data, in measurable phenomena. But what I experienced there, it shattered my reality. Our first week was uneventful. We set up our equipment, took readings, and joked about the spooky legends surrounding the place. We'd sit around the campfire at night, telling ghost stories, laughing at the absurdity of it all. But then, the laughter stopped. It started with the sounds. At first, it was just whispers on the wind. Words I couldn't quite make out. My colleagues said it was just the wind whistling through the rock formations. But I knew it was more than that. The whispers sounded personal, like someone was calling my name from just beyond the firelight. One night, I was calibrating a magnetometer near the homestead. The sun had just dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. The silence out there is profound, almost deafening. That's when I heard it, a cry. It wasn't human, and it wasn't any animal I'd ever heard. It was a sound of pure agony that seemed to come from everywhere at once. It made the hair on my arms stand up, and a cold sweat broke out on my forehead. I grabbed my radio, my hand shaking. Did anyone else hear that? I stammered into the mic. The reply came back, crackling with static. It was Sarah, our biologist. Hear what? Jacob. Oh, clear over here. I tried to dismiss it, to rationalize it. A coyote? Maybe? A mountain lion? But the sound was too complex, too filled with a chilling intelligence. The next night, it happened again. This time, it was closer. I was alone in my tent, trying to sleep, when I heard scratching on the canvas. Not the frantic scratching of a small animal, but a slow, deliberate scrape. 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 It was methodical, rhythmic. My heart hammered against my ribs. I held my breath, listening. The scratching stopped, and then I heard that whisper again, right outside my tent. Jacob ... It was my own voice whispering my name. The next morning, I checked the outside of my tent. There were long, deep gouges in the canvas, almost like they were made by claws, but they were too far apart, too precise. I showed the others. They were unnerved, but still tried to find a logical explanation. Probably just a branch rubbing against it in the wind, one of them suggested. But there were no trees close enough. The fear was starting to take hold, a silent passenger in our camp. Our equipment began to malfunction in inexplicable ways. Batteries would drain in minutes. Compasses would spin wildly, and GPS systems would place us miles away from our actual location. We started seeing things out of the corner of our eye stall, shadowy figures that would vanish the moment we turned to look. One evening, as Sarah and I were walking back to camp, we saw a massive wolf watching us from a ridge. Its size was unnatural, bigger than any wolf I'd ever seen or read about. But the most terrifying part was its eyes. They glowed with a faint, reddish light, and they weren't the eyes of an animal. They were intelligent, ancient, and filled with a terrifying malevolence. It watched us, unmoving, until we were back in the safety of the camp's lights. The true horror, however, came on our final night. A storm had rolled in, a fierce tempest, with thunder that shook the ground and lightning that illuminated the landscape in stark, terrifying flashes. We were all huddled in the main research cabin, the wind howling like a banshee outside. Suddenly, all our lights went out. We were plunged into absolute darkness, broken only by the flashes of lightning. In one of those flashes, I saw it. Standing in the doorway, silhouetted against the storm, was a figure. It was tall and impossibly thin, its limbs long and jointed at odd angles. It looked like a distorted mockery of a human form. No one screamed. We couldn't. We were paralyzed by a fear so profound it stole the air from our lungs. The thing took a step into the cabin. The sound of its movement was wrong-a-wet, clicking noise, like bones snapping and resetting with each step. Another flash of lightning, and it was closer. I could see its face. It had no discernible features, just a smooth, pale surface, but I could feel it looking at us. I could feel its hunger, its ancient hatred. It slowly raised a long, spindly arm and pointed a slender finger directly at me. Then it spoke. But the voice didn't come from the creature. It came from inside my own head. It used the voices of my loved ones, my mother, my father, my wife. They begged me to come outside, told me everything was okay, that they were waiting for me. It was a cruel, psychological torture. It knew my deepest fears, my most cherished memories, and it was twisting them into weapons. I squeezed my eyes shut, trying to block it out, but the voices only grew louder, more insistent. Then, just as suddenly as it appeared, it was gone. The next flash of lightning revealed an empty doorway. The storm died down, and the sun rose on a scene of devastation. Our camp was destroyed. Tents were shredded. Equipment was smashed beyond repair. We packed what little we could and left that accursed place, never to return. I resigned from the project the next day. I couldn't explain what I saw, not in a way science would accept, but I know what it was. It wasn't a legend or a myth. It was real. Sometimes, late at night, when the wind howls, I still hear it whispering my name, and I know, with a certainty that chills me to my very soul, that it remembers me, too. Thanks for listening, and please, be careful what you go looking for in the dark. Don't forget to follow 4 more true stories from the edge of the unknown. Have you ever felt a fear so deep it rewrites your mind? A dread that seeps into your bones, Not from what you see, but from what you can't. Tonight, we're not just talking about strange lights or fleeting shadows. We re-delving into the most insidious horror of Skinwalker Ranch, the psychological warfare it wages on those who dare to stay too long. Our story begins with a team of 4 seasoned paranormal investigators. Let's call their lead investigator Alex. He was a skeptic, a man who built his career on debunking hoaxes. With him were Maya, a sensitive with a knack for picking up emotional residue. Ben, the tech guru, armed with every sensor imaginable. And Liam, the group's historian and documentarian. They arrived at the ranch on a crisp autumn afternoon, the sky a brilliant, cloudless blue. The air was still, silent, almost too silent. Their first few days were uneventful. Ben's equipment registered some odd magnetic fluctuations around Homestead 2, but nothing conclusive. Maya felt a persistent hum of anxiety in the air, like the static before a storm, but she couldn't pinpoint its source. Alex, ever the pragmatist, was growing impatient, chalking it up to suggestion and the ranch's reputation. "It's just a place," he'd say, tapping his pen against his notepad. "A place with a lot of stories." The shift began on the 5th night. It wasn't a sudden event. It was a slow, creeping rot. It started with Ben. He became obsessed with a low-frequency hum his parabolic microphone was picking up, a sound no one else could hear. He'd sit for hours, headphones clamped on, face pale, muttering about patterns in the static. He stopped eating. He barely slept. He claimed the sound was talking to him, not in words, but in feelings. It was showing him things, moments of deep, personal failure and regret, replayed on a loop in his mind's eye. Then came Liam. The historian, the man of facts and figures, began having crippling panic attacks. They'd come out of nowhere. One minute he'd be cataloging their findings, the next he'd be on the floor, gasping for air, his eyes wide with a terror he couldn't name. He described a feeling of being watched, not by a person, but by the land itself. He felt as if the rocks, the dry soil, the very air, held a malevolent intelligence that was judging him, peeling back the layers of his sanity one by one. He started seeing movements at the edge of his vision distortions, like heat haze that would twist into vaguely humanoid shapes before vanishing when he turned to look. Maya, the sensitive, was arguably the worst off. The ambient anxiety she'd felt had intensified into a crushing wave of despair. She'd burst into tears without reason, overwhelmed by a grief that wasn't hers. She said the ranch was a repository of pain, a place that fed on negative emotions. At night, she dreamed of whispers in a language she didn't understand, the voices ancient and guttural. She'd wake up, convinced something had been in the room with her, a cold presence that left the scent of ozone and dry earth in its wake. She started drawing the same symbol over and over in her notebook, a twisted, spiral-like shape with 3 points. She didn't know why. Alex tried to hold it all together. He was their leader, the rock. But even the rock was beginning to crack. He didn't hear voices or see shadows. His affliction was more subtle, more poisonous. Paranoia began to take root in his mind. He started to doubt his team. He'd review Ben's audio logs, convinced his tech expert was fabricating the hum. He'd watch Liam during his panic attacks with a cold, analytical detachment, wondering if he was faking it for attention. He became suspicious of Maya, believing her emotional episodes were a ploy to derail the investigation. The man who came to debunk the ranch was now seeing conspiracies in the faces of his closest colleagues. He'd lock himself in their RV for hours, poring over the footage, rewatching every frame, searching for some trick, some lie. The camaraderie that had defined their team for years evaporated, replaced by a tense, ugly silence. They were 4 strangers, isolated by their own private torments, trapped together in a place that seemed to be actively trying to break them apart. The turning point came on their 10th and final night. A storm rolled in, a violent, unnatural squall that wasn't on any forecast. The wind howled like a starving animal, and the rain hammered against their RV. All of their equipment went haywire simultaneously. Screens filled with static, batteries drained in an instant, and every alarm blared at once. In the chaos, Ben ripped off his headphones, his eyes wild. "It's here," he screamed over the din. "It wants us to see." At that moment, a brilliant blue light pulsed from the direction of the mesa, bathing the entire ranch in an ethereal glow. It wasn't lightning. It was silent, cold, and utterly terrifying. In that flash of blue light, Alex saw it. For just a second, standing outside the RV's window, was a figure. It was tall, impossibly thin, and seemed to be made of shifting shadows and distorted limbs. It had no face, only a void. But Alex felt its gaze, an ancient, predatory intelligence that saw right through him, into the darkest corners of his soul. In that instant, understood, the ranch wasn't just haunted, it was a predator. And its prey wasn't your body, it was your mind. The light vanished, plunging them back into darkness, the cacophony of their failing equipment. The spell was broken. Liam was sobbing, huddled in a corner. Maya was chanting softly, her eyes shut tight. Ben was rocking back and forth, unresponsive. And Alex was frozen. The image of that faceless entity burned into his brain. He finally knew the true horror of Skinwalker Ranch. It doesn't need to touch you to destroy you. It just needs you to be there. It waits, it watches, and it slowly, patiently, unravels you from the inside out. They packed up in a frenzy as soon as the storm broke at dawn, not speaking a word. They left thousands of dollars of equipment behind. They just had to get away. They drove in silence for hours, each of them forever changed, carrying a piece of the ranch's oppressive darkness with them. Months later, they tried to debrief. Ben had to be hospitalized for acute psychosis. Liam developed a severe agoraphobia and refused to leave his house. Maya quit paranormal investigation entirely, seeking solace in a quiet, secluded life still haunted by nightmares of that three-pointed spiral. And Alex the skeptic, he never published their findings. He couldn't. How do you document a feeling? How do you provide evidence for a fear that consumes your sanity? The greatest trick the entity of Skinwalker Ranch ever pulled wasn't appearing in a photograph. It was convincing the world, and even its most ardent investigators, that maybe, just maybe, it was all in their heads. Thanks for watching. If you've enjoyed this dive into the psychological terror of the ranch, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more unsettling tales. Stay safe out there, and never underestimate the power of a place that feels wrong. The desert air at Skinwalker Ranch is different. It's heavy, electric, like the moments before a lightning strike. I learned that the hard way. My name is Dr. Stone, and I was part of a research team sent to document the inexplicable phenomena of the ranch. My specialty, advanced electronic surveillance. I arrived armed with the best gear money could buy. Thermal imaging cameras, high-frequency audio recorders, GPS-tracked drones. The works. I was a skeptic, a man of science, ready to debunk the local legends of shapeshifters and otherworldly beings. I believed every anomaly had a rational, scientific explanation. Primera, es wrong. Our first week was eerily quiet. We set up a perimeter of sensors around the main homestead, deployed drones for aerial mapping, and established a 24/7 monitoring station in our fortified base camp. The desert was calm, almost unnaturally so. The data streams were clean, the equipment performed flawlessly. My colleague, a geologist named Ben, joked that the most exciting thing we'd find was a rare type of quartz. On the 7th night, that all changed. It started subtly. At exactly 2:13 a.m., sensor post 3, on the edge of the mesa, went offline. Not a signal loss, just Gonza system registered it as if its power source had been instantly vaporized. I ran a diagnostic. Everything on my end was perfect. I radioed Ben, who was on watch. Ben, I've lost sensor 3. Can you get a visual? His reply was a crackle of static. Aris, your signal's breaking up. Something's out here. Then, silence. The radio was dead. My blood ran cold. One sensor going down could be a malfunction, but a military-grade radio failing at the same time. That wasn't a coincidence. I grabbed a high-powered flashlight and my personal sidearm, my skepticism now wrestling with a primal sense of fear. The base camp was bathed in the cold, sterile light of our flood lamps, but the desert beyond was a wall of impenetrable black. As I stepped outside, the generators sputtered, the floodlights flickered, died, and then plunged us into absolute darkness. A collective gasp came from the other 2 team members inside the trailer, or we were a blind. Every single piece of powered equipment had failed simultaneously. Not just the generators, but the battery backups, the emergency lights. Even the tiny LED on my digital watch was dark. It was a complete and total power drain, not a surge, not a short circuit. It felt like something had just consumed the energy. The silence that followed was terrifying. It was a dead silence, devoid of the usual night sounds of crickets or distant coyotes. The air grew cold, a sudden, biting chill that had nothing to do with the desert night. Then we heard it, a sound from the direction of the dead Sensa. It wasn't an animal I recognized. It was a low, guttural clicking, almost like a rapid sequence of stones being knocked together. But it had a wet, organic quality to it that made the hair on my arms stand up. I fumbled for the spare drone in my pack, the one I kept isolated with its own power cell. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely connect the controller. With a desperate prayer to whatever deity might be listening, I powered it on. The controller screen flickered to life. A single bar of battery. It had been fully charged an hour ago. I launched it anyway, pushing it fast and low towards the mesa. The drone's camera feed was grainy, full of static, but I could make out the landscape, ghostly and gray in the low light mode. The clicking sound grew louder, closer. It seemed to be coming from multiple directions now, circling our dark, vulnerable camp. On the drone's monitor, a shape darted across the screen. It was too fast, too fluid to be a coyote or a deer. It moved with an unnatural gait, low to the ground. I tried to pivot the camera to get a lock, but the controls were sluggish, unresponsive. The image distorted, tearing and pixelating. The clicking was right outside the trailer now. A heavy thud vibrated through the floor as something slammed against the metal wall. Through the static on the drone feed, I caught a glimpse of it. Just for a second, it was standing where Sensor 3 had been. It was tall, impossibly thin, its limbs bent at angles that defied anatomy. But it wasn't the shape that horrified me. It was the face. Or rather, the lack of one. Where a face should have been, there was only a smooth, pale surface. And then, as if it knew it was being watched, it turned its featureless head directly towards the drone's camera. The drone's battery indicator flashed red and died. The screen went black. At that exact moment, the clicking stopped. The oppressive silence returned. And then, a new sound. A voice, whispering from the radio on my belt, the one that had been dead for 10 minutes. It wasn't Ben's voice. It was a perfect, chilling mimicry of my own. It whispered a single sentence. "Your science can't save you here, Ares." Suddenly, the generators roared back to life. The floodlights blazed on, blinding us. Every piece of equipment in the trailer turned on at once. Monitors, radios, diagnostics all showing green, all reporting normal function. It was as if nothing had happened. Ben came sprinting back into camp, pale and breathless. He hadn't seen anything, he said. His radio just died. And he felt an overwhelming sense of dread that forced him to run back. We packed up before dawn. We didn't discuss what had happened. We didn't have to. I quit the project the next day. I left all my state-of-the-art equipment behind. It was useless there. The official report lists the incident as an unprecedented electromagnetic event of unknown origin. But I know what it was. It wasn't an event. It was a presence. Something ancient and intelligent that feeds on our technology, that uses our own voices to mock our futile attempts to understand it. It let us see just enough to know we were helpless. It wasn't hunting us. It was playing with us. And in that place, it always weans. You can't document a shadow that consumes the very light you use to see it. Thank you for listening to this story from Skinwalker Ranch. If you enjoyed this journey into the unknown, please like, share, and subscribe for more unsettling tales. Stay safe out there, and never trust the silence. The silence of Skinwalker Ranch isn't peaceful. It's heavy, like a held breath, waiting for something terrible to happen. I learned that the hard way. My name is Ethan, and I'm a geologist. Or at least, I was. Before I spent a week on that cursed land. I went there for the rocks, for the unique geological formations that make up the Ayinta Basin. I thought the local legends were just that stories spun to spook tourists. I couldn't have been more wrong. My first few days were uneventful, almost disappointingly normal. I set up my base camp near the edge of the property, a small tent, and my equipment spread out under the vast, stardusted Utah sky. I spent my days hiking, taking soil samples, and mapping out rock strata. The work was absorbing, and the sheer isolation was almost meditative. But as the sun dipped below the horizon on the third night, the atmosphere shifted. The familiar chirping of crickets faded into an unnerving quiet. The air grew cold, a biting chill that had nothing to do with the desert night. That's when I heard it for the first time, a sound that didn't belong. It was a cry, faint at first, carried on the wind. It sounded like a coyote, but twisted, distorted, filled with a human-like despair that made the hair on my arms stand up. I zipped my tent shut, telling myself it was just the wind playing tricks, my mind creating monsters out of loneliness. But the sound came again, closer this time, a mournful wail that seemed to echo from the very rocks around me. Sleep didn't come easy that night. The next day, I tried to shake it off. I focused on my work, trekking further into a narrow canyon I'd marked on my map. The rock walls rose high on either side, casting long, dancing shadows. That's when I saw the tracks. They were large, like a wolf's, but the stride was all wrong. The prints were too deep, the gait too long, as if something impossibly heavy was walking on two legs. Not for... I followed them, my scientific curiosity battling a rising tide of dread. The tracks led me to a small, dark cave carved into the canyon wall. A primal fear, an instinct I didn't know I possessed, screamed at me to turn back. Primera, ignore italiano. Peering into the darkness, a foul, coppery smell hit me. The scent of something old and predatory. I clicked on my headlamp, its beam cutting through the gloom. The cave was shallow, empty except for a pile of animal bones in the corner. But what chilled me to the core were the carvings on the wall. They weren't ancient petroglyphs. They were fresh. Scratched into the stone were crude depictions of animals: a wolf, a hawk, a cougar butt. Their eyes were drawn with an unsettling, human-like intelligence. And in the center, a tall, spindly figure, half man, half beast. My blood ran cold. This wasn't a dennet, was a lair. I backed away slowly, my heart hammering against my ribs. I practically ran back to my camp, the setting sun painting the sky in fiery shades of orange and red. The beauty of it was lost on me. All I could feel was a suffocating sense of being watched. Back at my tent, I found my supplies scattered. My food containers were torn open, not by claws, but as if pried apart by strong, dexterous hands. My water canteen was dented, my geological tools thrown about. Nothing was stolen, just violated. It was a message. You are not welcome here. That night, the sounds returned, but they were different. It started with a whisper. My name, Ethan, carried on the wind. It was a perfect imitation of my own voice, a faint, mocking echo. I sat frozen in my tent, clutching my largest rock hammer. Then came other sounds. A woman weeping softly just outside the canvas. A man coughing, a dry, rasping sound that seemed to circle my tent, getting closer with each rotation. I knew it was a trick. I knew there was no one out there. And yet, the sounds were so real, so convincing. They bypassed logic and went straight for my deepest fears. The worst part was the scratching, a slow, deliberate scrape against the side of my tent. Scrape. Pause. Scrape. Like a long fingernail being dragged down the fabric. I didn't dare make a sound. I just sat there, listening to the mimicry, to the scraping. my mind teetering on the edge of panic. It went on for what felt like an eternity. When dawn finally broke, the sounds ceased as abruptly as they had begun. Exhausted and terrified, I decided I had to leave. I wasn't a paranormal investigator. I was a scientist, and I was dangerously out of my depth. I began packing my gear with frantic energy, constantly looking over my shoulder, my ears straining for any unnatural sound. As I was collapsing my tent, I saw it, standing on the ridge overlooking my camp. Silhouetted against the morning sun was a figure. It was tall and unnaturally thin, its limbs long and jointed at odd angles. It stood perfectly still, just watching me. I couldn't make out its face, but I didn't need to. I could feel its gaze, a malevolent, ancient intelligence boring into me. It wasn't human, and it wasn't an animal. It was something in between, something that had been born of this twisted land. My hands trembled as I threw the last of my equipment into my Jeep. I didn't bother securing anything. I just jumped into the driver's seat, fumbled with the keys, and slammed my foot on the gas. I didn't look back, but I could feel its eyes on me the entire time, even as the dust cloud from my tires obscured the view. I drove for hours, not stopping, until I hit the main highway, until the desolate ranch was just a bad memory in my rearview mirror. It's been months since I left Skinwalker Ranch, but the ranch hasn't left me. Some nights, when the wind howls just right, I hear it, my own voice, whispering my name from the darkness outside my window. I see strange tracks in the mud after a rainstorm, tracks that don't belong to any animal I know. The geologian in me wants to find a rational explanation, but the man who spent a week on that cursed ground knows the truth. I brought something back with me, or rather, something followed me back. It's patient, it's watching, and it's waiting. Thanks for listening to my story. If you enjoyed it, please hit that like button and subscribe for more Chillin' Tailies. Stay safe out there. The first time I saw them, I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me. It was my third night on the ranch, part of a small research team hired by the new owner. We were there to document, to observe, and maybe, just maybe, to understand the bizarre phenomena that plagued this patch of Utah desert. I was the skeptic of the group, a geologist by trade, grounded in rock and reason. I was there to study the unique geological formations, not chase shadows. But on this land, the shadows chase you. It started around midnight. I was outside the main house, calibrating some ground-penetrating radar equipment. The desert night was a blanket of absolute black, stitched with a million stars. The air was cold, still, and so quiet you could hear your own heartbeat. That's when I saw it. A single point of light, hovering a few hundred yards out, just above the sagebrush. It was a deep, mesmerizing blue, like a sapphire lit from within. It pulsed gently, a slow, rhythmic beat. I froze, my hands still on the dial of my machine. My first thought was a drone, but there was no sound, no whir of propellers, no hum of electronics, just silent, impossible light. Then, a second orb appeared next to the first, and a third. Soon, there were half a dozen of them, all glowing with that same hypnotic blue, arranged in a loose, shifting pattern. They floated silently, moving with a grace that defied physics. I fumbled for my radio, my fingers clumsy with a sudden, unfamiliar chill. "Mark, you seeing this?" My voice came out as a strained whisper. Mark, our lead investigator, was inside, monitoring the thermal cameras. "Seeing what, Dave?" His voice crackled back. "Outside. To the east there. Lights. A pause. Nothing on thermal, Dave. The field is cold. Are you sure you're not just tired?" I looked from the orbs, back to the house, then back to the orbs. They were undeniably there. Solid, real, and glowing. How could the thermal not see them? It was like they were made of cold light, a concept my scientific mind refused to accept. Then, one of the orbs detached from the group. It drifted toward me, slowly at first, then picked up speed. My heart hammered against my ribs. Fight or flight kicked in, but I was rooted to the spot, mesmerized. The blue light grew brighter as it approached, casting long, dancing shadows behind me. It stopped about 50 feet away, hovering at eye level. In that moment, I felt something I'd never experienced before. It wasn't just fear, it was a feeling of being watched, of being assessed. The orb wasn't just a light, it was an intelligence. I felt it probing my mind, sifting through my thoughts, my memories, my skepticism. The feeling was invasive, violating. I wanted to scream, to run, but my body wouldn't obey. I could only stand there, a specimen under a microscope of eerie blue light. The air grew heavy, thick, with a strange, electric tension. The smell of ozone mixed with something else, something ancient and earthy, like damp soil and decay. The silence was shattered by a sound that came from the direction of the orb. It wasn't a voice, not in any human sense. It was a low, guttural chittering, a series of clicks and whistles that seemed to mimic something, to mock it. It sounded like a distorted recording of a coyote, played backward and twisted into something monstrous. My blood ran cold. This wasn't a drone. This wasn't a natural phenomenon. This was something else. Something alive. And the sound it made was the sound of a predator. The legends of this place flooded my mind. The tales of the Navajo, the warnings about the Skinwalkers, the shapeshifters who were said to haunt this very land. They spoke of malevolent beings who could take the form of animals, who could mimic voices, and who wielded a dark, powerful magic. I had dismissed them as folklore, as stories to explain the unexplainable. But standing there, bathed in that cold blue light, listening to that unnatural mimicry, folklore suddenly felt terrifyingly real. The orb darted to the left, then to the right, its movements impossibly fast and precise. It was toying with me, I realized, showing off its power, its complete control over the situation. The other orbs in the distance began to move as well, dancing in a silent, coordinated ballet of light that was both beautiful and terrifying. The chittering sound grew louder, joined by a low growl that seemed to vibrate through the soles of my boots. I finally broke free from my paralysis. I stumbled backward, tripping over my own feet, and scrambled away toward the relative safety of the house. I didn't look back. I didn't dare. I burst through the door, slamming it shut behind me, my chest heaving. Mark and the others rushed over, their faces a mixture of confusion and concern. "Dave, what is it? You look like you've seen a ghost." I couldn't speak. I just pointed a shaking finger toward the window. Mark went to the window and peered out. After a moment, a turned bike, his expression blank. "There's nothing there, Dave. It's pitch black." I staggered to the window and looked. He was right. The field was empty. The blue orbs were gone. The night was once again still and silent, as if nothing had happened. They tried to rationalize it. Ball lightning, a strange, atmospheric reflection, stress-induced hallucination. I knew what I saw, and more importantly, I knew what I felt. The feeling of being scrutinized by an ancient, non-human intelligence. The sound of that predatory mimicry. For the rest of my time on the ranch, primero voy, ese on edge. Every shadow seemed to move. Every sound in the night was a potential threat. I saw the blue orbs 2 more times, always from a distance, always silent, always watching. The second time, they appeared over the ridge, hovering above a group of our cattle. The next morning, 3 of the cows were gone. No tracks leading away, no signs of a struggle. They had just vanished. The ranch hands just shook their heads and muttered about the lights, their eyes full of a resigned fear I was beginning to understand. The final encounter was the most disturbing. We had set up a series of high-frequency audio recorders near one of the mesas where the orbs had been seen. One night, while reviewing the recordings, we picked up something. In between the chirps of crickets and the whisper of the wind, we heard it again. That same chittering, clicking sound I had heard up close, but this time it was followed by something else. A voice. It was a perfect imitation of my own voice, calling out Mark's name. "Mark, come look at this. Over, Ere." The recording sent a shiver down my entire spine. I had been in the house with the rest of the team when that recording was made, miles away from that mesa. Something out there was not only watching and listening, but it was learning. It was mimicking us. The blue orbs weren't just lights. They were scouts, perhaps. Eyes for something that hid in the darkness. We never saw what the orbs were connected to. We never saw a physical creature, but we felt its presence constantly. A heavy, oppressive feeling of being hunted. I left the ranch a week later and never went back. My geological report was inconclusive, filled with data that made no sense. But I took something with me from that place. A certainty that we are not alone in this world, and that some things are not meant to be understood by science. Some things are ancient, powerful, and exist in the shadows. And sometimes they hunt with cold, blue light. So if you're ever in that part of the country and you see strange blue lights floating silently in the desert night, don't be curious. Don't try to get a closer look. Turn around, get in your car, and drive. Drive and don't look back, because you are being watched, you are being assessed, and you are being hunted. And you may just hear your own voice calling you out into the darkness.